Hi, my harmonious family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Stories. Let's bow our heads and open our hearts to a beautiful prayer. Heavenly Father, bless my beautiful Mr. Peter Stories family with love, peace, and endless joy. Protect them, quiet them, and fill their hearts with unshakable faith. May happiness follow them always, and may our bond remain forever strong. Amen. I am truly overjoyed to hear that my stories are touching your hearts. Your beautiful comments are my biggest reward, and knowing that I bring you happiness is the greatest blessing of all. Tell me, my family, how did you feel about the last story? Did it move your heart the way I hoped it would? I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Let's begin with love and emotion. The crystal chandeliers of the Imperial Grand Hotel's ballroom cast prismatic patterns across Calliope Bree's deep brown skin as she adjusted the emerald silk of her Valentino gown. The fabric whispered against her curves, a small indulgence she'd allowed herself to celebrate making partner at Morrison and Blake Law. At 32, she was the youngest partner in the firm's history and the first black woman to achieve the position. Tonight's charity gala wasn't her usual scene, but her best friend and fellow attorney, Madison Chen, had insisted she step away from her case files to celebrate properly. You can't hide in your office forever, even if it does have the best view in Atlanta, Madison had argued earlier that week, practically throwing the invitation at her desk. Now, standing amid Atlanta's elite, Calliope wondered if she should have stayed with her comfortable routine of late nights and legal briefs. The annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala transformed the already opulent Imperial Grand into a wintertime fantasy, despite Atlanta's perpetual warmth. Ice sculptures caught the light, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the soft blues and silvers that dominated the decor. The city's most influential figures moved through the space like pieces on a chessboard, each interaction calculated and measured. Calliope's fingers brushed the delicate diamond drop earrings her father had given her when she passed the bar exam. Justice James Bree's words echoed in her memory. "Remember, butterfly, you've earned your place at every table." The nickname, given for her habit of spreading her wings and soaring higher than anyone expected, felt particularly apt tonight. She made her way to the bar, her Louboutin heels clicking against the marble floor. The Brooks merger case files threatened to invade her thoughts. Tomorrow's negotiations could make or break her reputation as partner, but she pushed them aside. One night of freedom from corporate law wouldn't unravel 7 years of dedicated work. "Macallan 18, neat," she told the bartender, earning an appreciative glance from the silver-haired man 2 seats down. Her choice in Scotch often surprised people. Another small rebellion against expectations. "Make that 2, a deep voice said from behind her, "and put both on my tab." Calliope turned, a polite refusal ready on her lips, but the words died in her throat. The man standing there commanded attention not through any obvious effort, but through sheer presence. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore his bespoke tuxedo-like armor, the black fabric emphasizing his athletic build. But it was his eyes that caught and held her attention, ice blue and intensely focused, set in a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. "I prefer to buy my own drinks," she said, recovering her composure. "But thank you for the offer." His lips curved into a slight smile. "Independent, I admire that." He settled onto the bar stool next to her, close enough that she caught the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive and understated, with notes of cedar and bergamot. Hendrik Percy. Calliope Bree. She accepted her scotch from the bartender, taking a contemplative sip. The liquid amber burned pleasantly, grounding her in the moment. "Calliope," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "The muse of epic poetry. Your parents were either very ambitious or great lovers of Greek mythology." "Both, actually. My mother read classics at Oxford before deciding to become a neurosurgeon. My father named me while she was still under anesthesia." The admission drew a genuine laugh from him, rich and warm. "And did you fulfill their ambitions? Become something epic?" Calliope turned slightly, studying him. Most men at these events tried to impress her with their own accomplishments, yet here he was, asking about hers. "I just made partner at Morrison and Blake, corporate law." "Impressive," he said, and genuinely seemed to mean it. "You must be the one handling the Brooks merger, then." Her guard instantly rose. "Client confidentiality prevents me from discussing any specific cases." "Of course." He held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I apologize. Business has a way of invading everything. In this city, tonight should be about more pleasant topics." The string quartet in the corner began playing a sophisticated arrangement of a popular love song, the familiar melody almost hidden beneath classical flourishes. Around them, the gala continued its elaborate dance of wealth and influence, but somehow their corner of the bar felt separated from it all, existing in its own pocket of time. "What would you consider a pleasant topic?" she asked, surprising herself with the flirtatious edge in her voice. "Article, travel, the way that dress makes your eyes look like whiskey in sunlight." He delivered the compliment so naturally that it took her a moment to register it. "Or why someone as fascinating as you is sitting alone at a bar during a gala." "Maybe I was waiting for interesting company." The Scotch had warmed her blood, making her bolder than usual. Or maybe it was just him, with those eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed professional facade. "And have you found it?" Their conversation flowed as easily as the Scotch, moving from art to architecture, from travel stories to childhood dreams. Hendrik possessed a sharp wit that matched his obvious intelligence, catching all her literary references and returning them in kind. He spoke passionately about historical preservation in architecture, the importance of maintaining a city's soul while allowing it to grow. When he asked her to dance, she found herself accepting without hesitation. His hand at her waist was warm and sure as he led her onto the floor, joining the other couples as the quartet began a waltz. They moved together as if they'd danced 1,000 times before, her body fitting perfectly against his larger frame. "You dance well for a corporate lawyer," he murmured, guiding her through a turn. "You're not so bad yourself, for whatever it is you do." She realized she still didn't know his profession, but found she didn't care. Tonight wasn't about networking or business connections. "Tonight, I'm just a man dancing with a beautiful woman." The answer should have seemed like a line, but his sincerity made it charming instead. As they moved across the floor, Calliope felt the weight of her responsibilities, her carefully planned life, and her constant drive for perfection beginning to fade. For once, she simply existed in the moment, letting herself feel everything. The strength of his hand at her waist, the warmth in his eyes, the chemistry that crackled between them like electricity before a storm. The dance ended, but neither of them moved to separate. Around them, the gala was reaching its peak, the energy shifting as champagne flowed freely and inhibitions lowered. The Winter Wonderland theme took on a magical quality in the dimmed lighting, ice sculptures glowing from within like frozen stars. "The terrace," Hendrik suggested, his voice low and intimate. "The view of the city is spectacular." She knew she should decline, knew that following a stranger onto a darkened terrace wasn't the behavior expected of a newly minted law partner, knew that the heat in his eyes promised things that went far beyond a simple nightcap. "Lead the way," she said instead. The Atlanta skyline spread before them like a carpet of stars, the city lights twinkling in the velvet darkness of the Georgia night. The air held the peculiar warmth of a southern winter, just cool enough to raise goosebumps on her bare shoulders. Without a word, Hendrik shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket and draped it over her, his hands lingering on her shoulders. "Beautiful," he said, but when she turned to look at him, he wasn't watching the skyline. "You don't know anything about me," she whispered, even as she leaned slightly into his touch. "I know you're brilliant. I know you're passionate about your work, but wonder sometimes if you've lost something in pursuit of success. I know you have walls built so high that most men wouldn't even attempt to scale them." His fingers traced her shoulder, feather-light. "And I know that tonight you're considering letting those walls down just a little. You seem very sure of yourself, only about things I want badly enough." The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable. His lips were warm and sure against hers, one hand cupping her face while the other drew her closer. Calliope melted into him, all her usual reservations forgotten in the heat of the moment. He kissed like a man who knew exactly what he wanted and exactly how to get it. But there was a tenderness underlying the passion that made her heart race. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, the sounds of the gala seemed very far away. The world had narrowed to just this. His eyes dark with desire, her hands fisted in his shirt, the chemistry between them almost visible in the moonlight. "Come up to my suite," he said, his voice rough. "Please." A lifetime of careful decisions and measured responses had led Calliope to where she was today. She'd never been the type to have one-night stands or go home with handsome strangers. Her life ran on schedules and plans, on carefully considered choices and logical progressions. But tonight, logic seemed very far away. Tonight was about feeling instead of thinking, about taking chances instead of playing it safe. Tonight was about the way he looked at her like she was something precious and wild at the same time, about the electricity that sparked between them with every touch. "Yes," she said simply, and watched his eyes darken further at her directness. The elevator ride to the penthouse level was charged with anticipation, their reflection in the mirrored walls showing them as a striking couple. Her emerald dress complementing his classic black and white, her warm brown skin glowing against his fair complexion. They didn't speak, but his hand never left the small of her back, burning through the silk of her dress. His suite occupied the entire top floor of the hotel, a fact that should have triggered questions in her legal mind about exactly who he was. But those thoughts disappeared when he pulled her into another searing kiss as soon as the elevator doors closed behind them. This kiss was hungrier than the one on the terrace, all pretense of restraint gone. They left a trail of clothing across the marble floors, his bow tie, her earrings, shoes abandoned like breadcrumbs, leading to the master bedroom. The city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows painted their skin in patterns of shadow and light as they explored each other with increasing urgency. Later, much later, they lay tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, the night sky visible through the windows. Calliope's head rested on Hendrik's chest, his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her ear. Neither spoke, unwilling to break the peaceful moment with words that might make it too real, too complicated. Eventually, she drifted off to sleep, lulled by his warmth and the bone-deep satisfaction of their passion. When she woke just before dawn, she slipped quietly from the bed, gathered her clothes and left without waking him. It was better this way, she told herself. One perfect night, unmarred by morning after awkwardness or the complications of real life. She didn't know that this night would change everything, didn't know that in 6 weeks, 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test would shatter her carefully ordered world, didn't know that the mysterious Hendrik was actually Hendrik Percy, CEO of Percy Hotels International and father of twin boys. Didn't know that their paths would cross again in the most unexpected way, or that their one night of passion would lead to a love story more epic than any Greek muse could have imagined. But for now, as she rode the elevator down to the lobby in her evening gown, she simply smiled, touching her lips where she could still feel his kisses. Sometimes, she thought, the most powerful choices were the ones that didn't feel like choices at all, but like destiny stepping in and taking the reins. Behind her, the sun began to rise over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, heralding the dawn of a new day and a new chapter in both their lives. Chapter 2. Unexpected News. 6 weeks after the gala, Calliope stood in her private bathroom at Morrison and Blake, staring at the 2 pink lines that had just appeared on the pregnancy test. The marble counter felt cool beneath her palms as she leaned forward, her designer suit jacket discarded on the hook behind her. The morning sun, streaming through the frosted glass window, seemed to mock the turmoil churning inside her. "This isn't happening," she whispered to her reflection, but the evidence was undeniable. 3 different tests, 3 identical results. The symptoms she'd attributed to stress from the Brooks merger case, the fatigue, the sensitivity to smells, the slight nausea in the mornings, suddenly made perfect sense. Her phone buzzed on the counter, Madison's name flashing on the screen. The quarterly partners meeting would start in 15 minutes. Calliope took a deep breath, smoothing down her Armani skirt and retrieving her jacket. She had built her career on handling impossible situations with grace under pressure. This would be no different. Across town, in the penthouse office suite of Percy Hotels International, Hendrik Percy stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Atlanta's morning traffic crawl far below. His twin sons, James and Julian, had just been dropped off at Atlanta Preparatory Academy in their matching uniforms, their bright blue eyes, mirror images of his own, still clouded with sleep. Mr. Percy, his executive assistant Catherine, appeared in the doorway. "The board members are assembled for the quarterly review." Hendrik nodded, adjusting his titanium watch, a gift from the twins on his last birthday, purchased with their allowance and their Aunt Juliet's help. At 8 years old, they were already showing signs of the men they would become. James, with his serious dedication to following in Hendrik's footsteps, Julian, with his artistic soul, and endless questions about their mother. The thought of their mother, Caroline, still brought a dull ache even after 8 years. She had hemorrhaged during the twins' birth, leaving Hendrik alone with 2 newborns and an empire to run. He had thrown himself into both responsibilities with equal dedication, determined that his sons would never feel the absence of either parent's love. But lately, the empty side of his bed seemed more noticeable. The memory of that night 6 weeks ago haunted him. The woman in emerald green who had matched him drink for drink, wit for wit. Calliope. He had searched for her afterward, but without a last name, and with Atlanta's social circles being surprisingly vast, he had come up empty. "The Wellington Holdings proposal is first on the agenda," Catherine reminded him as they walked toward the boardroom. "Mr. Wellington has been quite insistent about discussing a potential merger." Hendrik's jaw tightened. Richard Wellington had been his mentor once, teaching him the hotel business when he first took over Percy Hotels after his father's death. But Wellington's recent attempts to acquire smaller hotel chains had become increasingly aggressive, and Hendrik suspected his former mentor saw Percy Hotels as his next target. Back at Morrison and Blake, Calliope sat in her office after the partners' meeting, her laptop open to a calendar that now held new significance. The gala had been exactly 6 weeks ago. She had been so careful her entire adult life, but one night, one magical, reckless night, had changed everything. Her office door opened, and Madison walked in without knocking, their years of friendship allowing such liberties. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, closing the door behind her, "and you barely said 2 words in the meeting. The Calliope I know would have been all over the new international expansion plans." Calliope looked at her friend, the weight of her secret suddenly too heavy to bear alone. "I'm pregnant." Madison's eyes widened as she sank into one of the leather client chairs. "What? How? I mean, I know how, but who?" "Remember the night of the Children's Hospital Gala? The mystery man in the penthouse suite?" Madison leaned forward. The one you wouldn't tell me anything about except that it was perfect and just one night. Calliope nodded, running her fingers through her carefully styled curls. I don't even know his last name, Mads. Just Hendrik. He was everything I never knew I wanted. Intelligent, sophisticated, understood my literary references. We talked for hours before. She trailed off, the memories of that night flooding back. We need to find him, Madison said decisively. Surely there can't be that many Hendricks in Atlanta's upper circles. He was staying in the penthouse at the Imperial Grand. That alone narrows it down. No, Calliope said firmly. I'm not going to be that woman who tricks a man into responsibility. I made partner last month. I have savings, family support, and a career that can provide for a child. I don't need to complicate this. Meanwhile, Hendrik sat through the board meeting, his mind wandering to the twins' upcoming school play. Julian had been cast as the lead, while James had surprisingly volunteered to help with the set design. Their different personalities complemented each other perfectly, filling their home with a balance of creativity and practicality that reminded him of his younger sister Juliet. Percy Hotels cannot afford to remain stagnant, Richard Wellington was saying, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting authority. The market is changing. Smaller boutique chains are eating into our market share. A merger with Wellington Holdings would position us to dominate the luxury hotel market across 3 continents. Our market share is fine, Hendrik replied coolly. Our new sustainability initiatives have actually increased bookings among younger travelers, and our historic preservation projects have garnered excellent press. Speaking of press, Wellington said, sliding a tablet across the table, have you seen the latest Society blog posts? Your appearance at the Children's Hospital Gala caused quite a stir. The mysterious woman in green? The board is concerned about your personal life affecting share prices. Hendrik's hand tightened on his pen. My personal life is not up for board discussion. Neither are my children before you go there. Now, if we could return to actual business matters. The meeting continued, but Hendrik's thoughts kept drifting to that night. He had woken alone, not surprised but still disappointed. Only a lingering trace of her perfume on his pillow proved it hadn't been a dream. Something about her had called to him on a level he hadn't experienced since Caroline. The way she carried herself, the sharp intelligence behind her eyes, the surprising softness she revealed when she let her guard down. In her office, Calliope finished her 3rd cup of ginger tea, a replacement for her usual coffee. Her computer screen showed the Brooks merger documents, but she couldn't focus on the complex legal language. Instead, she found herself on the Imperial Grand's website, looking at photos of the penthouse suite where her life had changed forever. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Sunday dinner still on? Your father's grilling his famous ribeyes. The thought of telling her parents sent a wave of anxiety through her. Dr. Diana Bree and Justice James Bree had always supported her choices, had celebrated every achievement in her carefully planned rise to success. How would they react to this unplanned detour? The afternoon sun cast long shadows across her office as she finally allowed herself to think about the future. She had always wanted children, had assumed they would come after marriage, after making senior partner, after all her careful plans had fallen into place. Instead, fate had thrown her this curveball, challenging everything she thought she knew about herself. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Her secretary, Thomas, entered with a stack of files. The preliminary documents for tomorrow's Brooks merger negotiation, Ms. Bree, and... Are you feeling all right? You look a bit pale. I'm fine, she said automatically, then rushed to her private bathroom as another wave of nausea hit. Morning sickness, she was quickly learning, was not limited to mornings. When she returned to her desk, she found herself opening a new browser tab, searching for prenatal vitamins and pregnancy books. If she was doing this alone, she would do it right. Her child would have everything they needed, would know they were wanted and loved, regardless of the circumstances of their conception. As the day drew to a close, Hendrik left his office early, a rare occurrence, to pick up the twins from their after-school art program. Juliet had started it at the hotel's community center, turning an unused conference room into a studio where children could explore their creativity. Julian thrived there, while James attended mainly to support his brother. "Dad!" Julian called out when Hendrik entered the art room. "Look what I painted!" The canvas showed a family portrait, Hendrik the twins, and a shadowy figure that might have been Caroline, or perhaps just Julian's hope for a mother's love. The ache in Hendrik's chest intensified. "It's beautiful," he said sincerely, ruffling Julian's hair. "Where's your brother?" "Here," James said, emerging from behind an easel with paint on his usually immaculate uniform. "I was helping Julian mix colors." As they drove home in Hendrik's Range Rover, the twins chatted about their day. Julian had aced his history test, while James had been chosen to represent his class in the upcoming Math Olympics. Their voices filled the car with warmth, but Hendrik couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. That night, after the twins were asleep, Hendrik stood on his penthouse balcony with a glass of the same scotch he had shared with Calliope. The city lights blurred into a tapestry of possibilities, each one leading back to the woman who had slipped away in the dawn. He had never believed in fate or destiny, had built his life on careful decisions and calculated risks, but something about that night had felt meant to be, as if all his choices had been leading to that moment. In her own apartment across town, Calliope curled up on her window seat, her hand resting unconsciously on her still flat stomach. The city spread out before her, holding somewhere within it the father of her child, a man who had given her one perfect night and unknowingly the greatest challenge and blessing of her life. Neither of them could know that their paths would cross again soon, that the carefully ordered worlds they had built would collide in ways they could never have imagined, that the twins would gain not just a potential mother figure, but a sister. That love would find them again, stronger for the complications and sweeter for the waiting. But for now, they existed in parallel, each facing their own challenges as the Atlanta night wrapped around them like a blanket of stars, promising that tomorrow would bring new possibilities, new challenges, and perhaps new beginnings. Chapter 3. Paths Cross Again. The morning of the Brooks merger negotiation arrived with cruel clarity. Calliope entered the Imperial Grand's Executive Conference Center, memories of that night 6 weeks ago, threatening to overwhelm her. Her dark blue Chanel suit felt like armor as she prepared for what should have been the crowning achievement of her new partnership. "Conference Room A is ready, Ms. Bree," the concierge informed her, his voice echoing in the marble hallway. She set up her materials with precise movements, fighting the slight nausea that had become her constant companion. Madison arrived with their junior associates, placing a cup of ginger tea at her elbow, their new morning ritual since coffee had become her enemy. "Ready to make history?" Madison asked. Before Calliope could respond, a voice from the hallway stopped her heart. "The twins' school play is next week, Catherine. Make sure the Tokyo video conference is rescheduled." That voice. She knew that voice. The double doors swung open and Hendrik Percy strode in, even more handsome in his business persona than he had been in his tuxedo. His perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit commanded attention, but it was his ice-blue eyes that caught and held her gaze across the conference table. Recognition, shock, and something else flashed across his face before his professional mask slipped back into place. He faltered for just a moment, so briefly that only someone watching closely would have noticed. "Ms. Bree," he said smoothly, extending his hand. "Hendrik Percy, CEO of Percy Hotels International." His touch sent electricity through her arm, memories of those same hands on her skin threatening to shatter her composure. "Mr. Percy, pleasure to meet you." Madison's sharp intake of breath confirmed that her friend had made the connection. Hendrik, the mysterious man from the gala, the father of her unborn child, was Percy Hotel's enigmatic CEO and one of Atlanta's most eligible widowers. Richard Wellington's voice cut through the tension. "Shall we begin? We have a lot to cover." The next hour passed in a blur of professional detachment as they negotiated the Brooks merger terms. Calliope presented with precision and clarity, never letting her voice waver. Hendrik responded with counter-offers that demonstrated why he'd built Percy Hotels into an international powerhouse. During a brief recess, Calliope escaped to her private bathroom, pressing her forehead against the cool mirror. A knock made her jump. "Calliope!" Madison's voice was urgent. "You need to see this." She opened the door to find her friend holding a tablet opened to a society blog. The headline made her blood run cold. Percy Hotel's CEO's mystery woman. Who was the beauty in green at the Children's Hospital Gala? The article included a grainy photo of them dancing, her emerald dress unmistakable. The caption speculated about whether Atlanta's most eligible widower had finally found love again. "It's been 6 weeks," Madison whispered. "The timing. Calliope. He needs to know. Not now. Not in the middle of the biggest merger negotiation of my career." When they returned to the conference room, Wellington was speaking quietly to Hendrik, who looked increasingly annoyed. The older man's eyes tracked Calliope as she took her seat, a calculating gleam in them that made her uneasy. The rest of the meeting passed in a haze of legal terms and financial projections. By the time they broke for lunch, preliminary agreements had been reached on most major points. "Ms. Bree," Hendrik's voice stopped her as the others filed out. "A moment of your time?" Madison squeezed her arm as she left, closing the door behind her. Silence fell over the conference room, heavy with unspoken words. "Calliope," he said softly, her name on his lips bringing back memories of whispered endearments in the dark. "Don't." She held up a hand. "This is a professional meeting, Mr. Percy. Nothing more." "Nothing more?" He moved closer, still maintaining a respectable distance, but close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same one from that night. "We need to talk about what happened. We had one night, a beautiful night, but just one. Now we have a business relationship to maintain." His eyes searched her face. "Is that really all it was to you? One night?" Before she could answer, Catherine appeared. "Mr. Percy, Mr. Wellington needs you for an urgent call with the board." Hendrik's jaw tightened. "Tell him I'll be there shortly." He turned back to Calliope. "This conversation isn't over. Have dinner with me tonight." "I can't." The words came out too quickly. "I have commitments." "Tomorrow then, please, Calliope. There's so much you don't know, so much I need to explain." "The twins have their art class until 6, he continued, unaware of how his casual mention of his sons hit her like a physical blow. "I could meet you at 7 at Le Petit Maison." She felt her resolve weakening. "Fine. 7 o'clock. Relief flooded his features. "Thank you." He took a step closer, then seemed to think better of it. "Until tomorrow, then." She waited until he left, before sinking into her chair, one hand pressed against her still flat stomach where their child grew. Somewhere above them, the same penthouse suite where their story began waited silently, holding memories of a night that had changed everything. The afternoon session was torture. Every time Hendrik spoke, she found herself studying him through new eyes, not just as her one-night stand or her business associate, but as the father of her child. She noticed things she'd missed earlier, the slight shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights, the way he checked his phone during breaks, probably messages about the twins, the wedding ring tan line that had faded but not disappeared. As the meeting concluded and hands were shaken, Calliope managed to escape without any more private conversations with Hendrik, but she felt his eyes on her as she left. Their paths had crossed again, but now the simple passion of that first night was complicated by business, family, and the secret growing beneath her heart. That evening, as she lay in bed trying to sleep, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for agreeing to dinner. There's so much I want to tell you about that night, and every day since. H." She stared at the message until her vision blurred with tears. How had her carefully ordered life become so complicated? And why did part of her heart leap with joy at the prospect of seeing him again? The Atlanta skyline twinkled outside her window, the same view they'd shared from his penthouse that night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now she allowed herself to remember the magic of their first meeting and wonder what tomorrow's dinner might bring. Chapter 4. Truth and Consequences. The morning of the pivotal court proceeding for the Brooks merger preliminary injunction, Calliope stood before the mirror in her office bathroom, scrutinizing her appearance. Her Dior suit still fit perfectly, but she knew it wouldn't for much longer. At 9 weeks pregnant, she'd managed to keep her condition private, but the morning sickness was becoming harder to hide. She hadn't cancelled dinner with Hendrik the week before, but fate had intervened when Julian had come down with a fever, sending their carefully laid plans into disarray. His apologetic text had brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "The twins need me tonight. I'm sorry. Can we reschedule?" She'd responded with professional understanding, ignoring the way her heart clenched at his obvious devotion to his sons. "The courthouse called," Madison said, appearing in the bathroom doorway. "Wellington's lawyers filed last-minute motions. Judge Harrison wants everyone there early." Calliope nodded, tucking away thoughts of Hendrik and focusing on the task ahead. Wellington Holdings had filed an injunction attempting to block the Brooks merger, claiming prior negotiation rights. It was a transparent attempt to derail Percy Hotel's acquisition, but it had to be handled carefully. The Atlanta courthouse buzzed with activity as Calliope strode through security, her heels clicking against the marble floors. The familiar scent of old wood and leather usually calmed her, but today it made her stomach turn. She forced herself to take small sips of water, knowing she needed to stay hydrated. "Miss Bree!" Richard Wellington's voice stopped her outside the courtroom. He stood with his legal team, radiating smug confidence. "Lovely morning, isn't it? Shame about all this legal unpleasantness." "Mr. Wellington." She kept her voice cool and professional. "I suppose we'll let Judge Harrison decide how unpleasant it needs to be." She felt Hendrik's presence before she saw him, the air charging with electricity as he approached. He wore a deep charcoal suit that made his blue eyes seem even more intense. Their gazes met briefly, and she saw the question in his. The same question that had been there for weeks. "When can we talk?" The bailiff called them into the courtroom. Calliope moved confidently to the plaintiff's table, spreading out her documents with practiced efficiency. The morning proceeded as expected, with Wellington's lawyers presenting their argument for the injunction. She took careful notes, ignoring the occasional wave of nausea that threatened her composure. When it was her turn to present Percy Hotel's counter-argument, Calliope rose gracefully. "Your Honor, Wellington Holdings' claim of prior negotiation rights is not only unsubstantiated, but demonstrably false. I direct the court's attention to Exhibit C. The room started to spin. She gripped the podium, trying to focus on her notes, but the words blurred before her eyes. The familiar courthouse lights seemed suddenly too bright, the air too thick. "Ms. Bree," Judge Harrison's voice came from very far away. "Are you all right?" She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Hendrik's face, etched with concern, as he half rose from his seat. She awoke to the steady beep of hospital monitors and the smell of antiseptic. Madison sat beside her bed, while a doctor checked her vitals. What happened? Calliope tried to sit up, but Madison's hand on her shoulder kept her still. "You fainted in court," her friend said softly. "Your blood pressure dropped pretty low. The doctor says it's not uncommon in the first trimester, but—" Calliope's hand flew to her stomach. "Does everyone know?" "The paramedics had to inform the court about your condition to ensure proper medical care." Madison hesitated. Hendrik was there when they announced it. He did the math, Calliope. Before she could respond, a commotion arose in the hallway. Through the glass walls of her hospital room, she saw Hendrik arguing with a nurse, his usual composure replaced by urgent intensity. "Sir, only family is allowed. I'm the father of her child." His voice carried clearly through the door. "Please, I need to see her." The nurse looked to Calliope for confirmation. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Madison squeezed her hand and slipped out as Hendrik entered, leaving them alone for the first time since that night at the hotel. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Hendrik looked more disheveled than she'd ever seen him, his tie loosened and hair slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Were you going to tell me?" he finally asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes. Number I don't know." She looked down at her hands, unable to meet his gaze. "I tried to find the right moment." The right moment. He moved closer, sinking into the chair Madison had vacated. "Calliope, you're carrying my child. Any moment would have been the right moment." "Your life is complicated enough," she said softly. "You have the twins to think about, and the company—" "Stop!" His hand covered hers, the contact sending sparks through her arm. "Don't make decisions about my life without consulting me. The twins are exactly why you should have told me immediately. This baby is their sibling." The word hit her like a physical blow. Of course, this wasn't just about her and Hendrik. This baby would have brothers, a ready-made family she hadn't let herself consider. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears finally spilling over. "I was scared. Everything I've worked for, my career, my independence, it all seemed at risk, and then when I found out who you were, you thought I'd try to control the situation." His thumb traced circles on her palm, the gesture oddly soothing. "Calliope, that night meant more to me than you know. Finding you again, like this, it's unexpected but not unwelcome." A knock at the door interrupted them. The doctor entered with discharge papers and strict instructions about rest and prenatal care. Hendrik absorbed every detail with the same focus he gave to business negotiations, asking intelligent questions about diet and activity restrictions. "I'm having my driver bring the car around," he said once they were alone again. "I'll take you home." "That's not necessary." "Please." His eyes held hers. "Let me take care of you. Both of you." The drive to her Buckhead apartment was quiet, but not uncomfortably so. Hendrik's presence beside her felt oddly right, as if the universe had been waiting for this moment to bring them full circle. "The twins have been asking about you," he said suddenly. At her startled look, he explained, "They saw the society blog photo. Julian said you looked like a princess in your green dress. James wanted to know if you were smart, because princesses in books are sometimes just pretty." A laugh bubbled up despite her exhaustion. "And what did you tell them?" "That you were the smartest person in any room." His smile faded into seriousness. "They need to know about the baby, Calliope. They're old enough to understand, and they deserve to be part of this from the beginning." She nodded slowly. "How do you think they'll take it?" "Julian will be thrilled. He's been begging for a sibling since he could talk. James ... He sighed. "James might take longer to adjust. He's very protective of our family unit." They arrived at her building, and Hendrik insisted on walking her to her door. In the elevator, she found herself studying his profile, seeing the father of her child instead of just the handsome stranger from that magical night. "We need to talk about how to handle this publicly," he said as she unlocked her door. "The merger, the pregnancy, it's going to be complicated." "I know." She turned to face him, suddenly needing him to understand. "I never meant for any of this to happen. Sometimes the best things in life are unplanned." His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "That night, I'd closed myself off for so long after Caroline died. The twins were enough. My work was enough. Then I met you, and suddenly enough didn't seem like enough anymore." The sincerity in his voice undid her completely. She leaned into his touch, remembering how safe she'd felt in his arms that night. "Have dinner with me and the twins tomorrow," he said softly. "Let's start building whatever this is going to be. No more hiding, no more waiting for the perfect moment." Looking into his eyes, Calliope saw not just the passionate stranger from the gala or the powerful CEO from the boardroom, but a man who had pieced together a life after loss, who had raised 2 boys alone, who was offering her a chance at something real. "Yes," she whispered. His smile lit up his entire face. He leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Rest now. I'll send a car for you tomorrow at 6. After he left, Calliope stood at her window watching his car pull away. Her hand rested on her stomach where their child grew, unaware of the complications and possibilities swirling around its existence. Her phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Court's been rescheduled for next week. Wellington's lawyers are already spreading rumors about conflict of interest. You okay?" The professional complications would have to be dealt with. The public scrutiny would be intense. The path ahead was uncertain and frightening, and nothing like she'd planned, but as she felt the first flutter of movement in her womb, too early to be the baby, just her body adjusting to its new reality, Calliope smiled. Sometimes the best things in life came in unexpected packages, wrapped in green silk and moonlight, sealed with a kiss that tasted like destiny. Chapter 5. Family Ties. The Percy mansion in Buckhead loomed before Calliope as Hendrik's driver opened her car door. Georgian architecture met modern luxury in the sprawling estate, its manicured gardens glowing in the early evening light. She smoothed her cashmere sweater dress, chosen carefully to be elegant yet approachable for meeting the twins. "They're excited to meet you," Hendrik said, appearing at the front door. He looked different here, more relaxed in dark jeans and a navy cashmere sweater that matched his eyes. "Though I should warn you, Juliet's here too." As if summoned, a willowy woman with Hendrik's blue eyes and wild auburn curls emerged behind him. Juliet Percy wore paint-splattered designer jeans and a silk blouse, somehow making the combination look intentional rather than haphazard. "So you're the woman who's turned my brother's world upside down," Juliet said, studying Calliope with frank curiosity. "Twice, apparently." "Juliet," Hendrik warned, but his sister waved him off. "The boys are in the art room," she continued. "They've been asking about you all day. Julian's already painted 3 pictures of what he thinks the baby might look like." The mention of the baby hung in the air for a moment. They'd agreed to tell the twins tonight, but Juliet's casual reference reminded Calliope how quickly news traveled in their circles. Inside, the house was a perfect blend of historic architecture and contemporary comfort. Family photos lined the walls, the twins through various stages of growth, Hendrik teaching them to swim, Juliet covered in paint with the boys in what looked like an art class. Squeals of laughter led them to a bright room overlooking the garden. Two identical boys, with their father's blue eyes and dark hair, were engaged in what appeared to be an epic battle with paintbrushes. "James started it," Julian said immediately, lowering his brush. "Did not," James protested, then caught sight of Calliope. His expression shifted from playful to serious in an instant. "You're the lady from the photo." "Boys," Hendrik said, his voice gentle but firm, "this is Calliope Bree. She's very special to me." Julian bounced forward immediately, paint-stained hands clasped behind his back. "Did you really wear that green dress? It looked like magic in the picture. I tried to paint it, but I couldn't get the color right." "It was emerald green," Calliope said, charmed by his enthusiasm. "Like the gemstone." "That's what I said." Julian turned to his brother triumphantly. "You said it was forest green." James hung back, studying her with an intensity that reminded her of his father in the boardroom. "Dad said you're a lawyer. Do you help people?" "I try to," she answered honestly. "I help businesses solve their problems legally and fairly." "Like Dad's hotel problem?" James pressed. "I heard Uncle Richard saying mean things about Dad's company on TV." Hendrik stiffened beside her, but Calliope maintained her composure. "Sometimes business gets complicated, but that's why we have laws and courts to make sure everything is handled fairly." "All right, young investigators," Juliet interrupted. "Why don't you show Calliope your latest art projects while Dad and I check on dinner?" As Hendrik and Juliet left, Julian grabbed Calliope's hand, pulling her toward an easel. "I'm working on a series. That means lots of paintings that go together, like Dad's hotel chain." James followed more slowly, but his curiosity seemed to overcome his reserve. "Do you like art too? Aunt Juliet says everyone can be artistic in their own way." "I love art," Calliope said, examining Julian's vibrant, abstract painting. "But I'm better at appreciating it than creating it. My mother used to take me to galleries every Sunday after church." "Our mom died when we were born," Julian said matter-of-factly. "But Dad and Aunt Juliet tell us stories about her. She liked to garden. That's why we have so many flowers." Calliope's heart clenched at the casual mention of Caroline. In the kitchen, she could hear Hendrik and Juliet's voices rising in what seemed like an argument. "They already lost one mother," Juliet was saying. "If this goes wrong—" "It won't," Hendrik cut her off. "Calliope's different. You don't know her like I do." "That's exactly my point. Neither do you, really. One night and a few business meetings don't—" "Did you really dance with Dad at the party?" James asked loudly, clearly trying to drown out the argument. "He never dances, not even at Uncle Richard's Christmas party." "We did dance," Calliope confirmed, grateful for the distraction. "Your father is quite good at it." "He's good at everything," James said proudly, "except cooking. That's why we have Mrs. Garcia." As if on cue, a warm, motherly woman appeared in the doorway. "Dinner is ready, niños. Go wash those hands. I see the paint from here." The twins scampered off, leaving Calliope with the housekeeper who had clearly helped raise them. Mrs. Garcia's dark eyes were kind, but assessing as she looked Calliope over. "They are good boys," she said softly. "They have had enough change in their lives, enough disappointment. You understand?" Before Calliope could respond, Hendrik returned. His expression softened, seeing her surrounded by his son's artwork. "Ready for dinner? We have some news to share." The formal dining room had been bypassed in favor of the cozier breakfast nook, with its view of the illuminated garden. The twins were already seated, faces scrubbed clean of paint. Juliet took the seat beside James, leaving Calliope between Hendrik and Julian. "Before we eat," Hendrik began, his hand finding Calliope's under the table, "there's something important we need to tell you both." Julian's eyes lit up, but James went very still. "Are you getting married?" he asked, his voice small. "No, honey," Calliope said gently. "But something just as important is happening. You're going to have a new brother or sister." Silence fell over the table. Julian's fork clattered against his plate. "A baby," he whispered, awe in his voice. "Really?" James looked between his father and Calliope, his quick mind clearly connecting dots. "Is that why you fainted in court? We saw it on the news." "Yes," Calliope admitted. "Sometimes pregnancy makes you feel a bit sick at first, but I'm fine now." "Where will the baby sleep?" Julian asked, practically bouncing in his chair. "Can it sleep in my room? I'll be the best big brother ever." "The baby won't come for several more months," Hendrik explained. "We have time to figure everything out." "Will you live here?" James's question cut through Julian's excitement. "With the baby?" "We haven't figured out all the details yet," Hendrik said carefully, "but Calliope and the baby will be part of our family." "We had a family," James said, pushing back from the table, "before she came and ruined everything." He ran from the room, leaving stunned silence in his wake. Julian looked torn between following his brother and staying to ask more questions about the baby. "I'll go," Juliet said, rising. "He needs time to process." Calliope felt tears threatening but forced them back. Pregnancy hormones made her emotions volatile, but she refused to break down now. "I'm sorry," Hendrik murmured, squeezing her hand. "He's always been sensitive to change." "Don't be sad," Julian said, coming around to hug her impulsively. "James was mad when Dad got him a new backpack too. He just likes things to stay the same." Mrs. Garcia appeared with perfect timing, serving their dinner as if nothing had happened. The conversation gradually resumed, with Julian peppering them with questions about the baby and his future role as a big brother. Later, after Julian had been sent to bed with promises of helping to decorate the nursery, Calliope found herself in Hendrik's study. Juliet had reported that James was calmer, but wanted to be alone, a request they'd honored. "He'll come around," Hendrik said, pouring them both sparkling water. "He's more like me than I sometimes want to admit. We both need time to adjust to change." "What if he doesn't?" Calliope sank onto the leather sofa. "What if he always sees me as the woman who disrupted his life?" "He won't." Hendrik sat beside her, pulling her close. "James is struggling because he's scared. His whole life, it's been just us and Juliet. The idea of loving someone new, of being vulnerable to loss again, it terrifies him. I understand that feeling all too well." She turned to look at him. "And you? Are you terrified? Of losing you?" "Yes." His honesty surprised her. "But I'm more terrified of not trying. That night at the gala, you woke something in me I thought had died with Caroline. Finding out about the baby, it felt like the universe giving me a second chance at happiness, at family. Even with all the complications, the merger, Wellington, the media attention. Especially then," he traced her jaw with his finger. "You're fighting for what's right in the boardroom and the courtroom. You're gentle with Julian's enthusiasm and patient with James's fear. You're everything I never knew I was looking for." Their lips met in a soft kiss that quickly deepened, filled with all the emotion of the past weeks. When they finally parted, Calliope rested her head on his shoulder, feeling truly at peace for the first time since seeing those two pink lines. "Stay tonight," Hendrik whispered. "Not for anything but sleep. I sleep better when you're near." The admission, so vulnerable from such a powerful man, melted the last of her reserves. "Okay." Later, as she lay in his arms in the master suite, Calliope heard small footsteps in the hallway. The door creaked open slightly, and James's voice came quietly through the gap. "Dad, are you awake?" "Come here, buddy," Hendrik called softly. James padded across the room, hesitating when he saw Calliope. But something in her sleepy smile must have reassured him, because he climbed onto the bed, curling into his father's side. "I'm sorry I was mean," he whispered. Julian said the baby is our for-real sibling, like by blood. That's right, Hendrik confirmed. This baby will be connected to you just like Julian is. So, we have to protect it? Like I protect Julian when kids at school are mean about him being artistic. Calliope felt tears spring to her eyes at the boy's protective instinct. That's very brave of you, James. The baby will be lucky to have such strong big brothers. He was quiet for a long moment. Can I feel it? The baby. It's too small right now, she explained. But in a few months you'll be able to feel it kick. Cool. He yawned hugely. Dad, can I stay here tonight? Just this once. Hendrik met Calliope's eyes over his son's head, seeking permission. She nodded, her heart full. As James drifted off between them, Calliope realized that family wasn't just about blood or legal documents. It was about moments like this, quiet understanding, forgiveness, and love growing in unexpected places. Outside, Atlanta's lights twinkled like earthbound stars, while inside the Percy mansion, a new family configuration was taking shape, as delicate and precious as the life growing beneath Calliope's heart. Chapter 6. Corporate Warfare. The morning headlines screamed across every major business publication. Wellington Holdings launches hostile takeover, bid for Percy Hotels. Calliope stood in the Percy mansion's kitchen, her morning tea forgotten as she absorbed the implications. Beside her, Hendrik was already on his phone, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Get the board on a conference call," he commanded, pacing the marble countertop. "And where are we on those trust fund documents?" The twins sat at the breakfast table, picking up on the tension despite their father's attempts to shield them. In the month since the pregnancy announcement, they'd fallen into a comfortable routine of Calliope staying over several nights a week. Now, at 12 weeks pregnant, she was finally past the worst of her morning sickness, but this morning's nausea had nothing to do with the baby. "Daddy?" Julian's voice was small. "Is Uncle Richard trying to take your hotels?" Hendrik's expression softened as he looked at his son. "Don't worry about that, buddy. Everything's going to be fine." But James, ever perceptive, wasn't so easily reassured. "The news said he's using our trust funds as leverage. What does that mean?" Wellington had somehow gained partial control of the twins' trust funds, which held significant Percy Hotels stock. Their mother's family had set up the trusts, and now Wellington was attempting to use them as part of his takeover strategy. "It means," Calliope said carefully, "that Uncle Richard is trying to use money that belongs to you to help him buy your father's company. But we're not going to let that happen." "Because you're a lawyer," James said, newfound confidence in his voice. "You can stop him." After the twins left for school with Mrs. Garcia, the adult world crashed in fully. Hendrik's home office became a war room, with lawyers and financial advisors streaming in and out. Calliope attended remotely, maintaining professional distance due to her role in the Brooks merger. "Wellington's playing dirty," Madison reported during their lunch conference call. "He's telling anyone who'll listen that your pregnancy compromised the merger negotiations. The Brooks family is getting nervous." A knock at her office door interrupted her thoughts. Richard Wellington himself stood there, impeccable in a bespoke suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Miss Bree," he said smoothly, "do you have a moment?" Madison's voice came through the phone. "Is that him?" "Don't—" Calliope ended the call. "Mr. Wellington, to what do I owe this surprise?" He settled into one of her client chairs without waiting for an invitation. "I thought we might discuss your unique position in all this. I've already recused myself from any matters involving Wellington Holdings." "Yes, very professional of you." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "But we both know this situation goes far beyond professional considerations. Those boys have been through so much already." Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach, where their sibling grew. The twins are none of your concern. No? He raised an eyebrow. Their trust funds, their inheritance, is being jeopardized by their father's stubborn refusal to see reason, and now, with another child on the way, one whose claim to the Percy fortune could potentially dilute their shares. Get out. Calliope's voice was steel. Any further communication can go through our respective counsel. Think about it, Ms. Bree. A quiet settlement, a generous trust fund for your child, and you could avoid all this messy publicity. The scandal of a pregnant attorney negotiating with her baby's father. It could end your career. Before she could respond, another voice cut through the tension. I believe Ms. Bree asked you to leave. Juliet stood in the doorway, her artist's smock incongruous in the law office setting, but her Percy bearing unmistakable. Wellington's smile turned cold. Juliet, still playing with paint while your family's legacy crumbles? Better than playing with other people's lives. Juliet moved to stand beside Calliope. You forget, Richard, I was there when you tried these same tactics with Caroline's family. It didn't work then either. After he left, Juliet sank into the chair he'd vacated. I'm sorry. I came to see if you wanted lunch and overheard. Thank you, Calliope said sincerely, for having my back. Yeah, well, Juliet smiled wryly. Turns out I'm getting kind of attached to you, and that baby is my niece or nephew. Nobody threatens my family. Later that night, Calliope curled up with Hendrik in his study after the twins were asleep. Financial reports and legal documents covered every surface as his team prepared for the next day's board meeting. He's claiming the Brooks merger was compromised, Hendrik said, loosening his tie, that our relationship affected the negotiations. If the board believes him, they won't. Calliope moved behind him, massaging his tight shoulders. The merger documents are clean, the terms are fair, and the timing works in our favor. We were already in final negotiations before I got you pregnant. His laugh held no humor. God, Calliope, I'm so sorry you're caught in this mess. Hey, she turned his chair to face her. I'm exactly where I want to be. Wellington thinks he can use our relationship against us. Let him try. Love isn't a weakness, Hendrik. It's strength. He pulled her into his lap, one hand cradling her slightly rounded stomach. When did you get so wise? Around the time your son explained to me that sometimes you have to break the rules to make better ones. At his questioning look, she smiled. James. He was telling me about how he convinced his art teacher that math and art are connected through sacred geometry. The next morning's board meeting proved decisive. Wellington's takeover bid was rejected, his attempts to use the twins' trust funds blocked. As he stormed out of the boardroom, his face purple with rage, Calliope felt the baby move for the first time, a tiny flutter of triumph. That night, after picking up the twins and celebrating with pizza and ice cream, the family gathered in the media room for movie night. James fell asleep with his head on Calliope's lap, while Julian curled against her side, one hand resting protectively on her bump. Thank you, Hendrik whispered as the credits rolled, for fighting for us, for believing in this family. Always, she promised, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The corporate war was won, but as she looked at their unconventional family unit, her brilliant stepson using her as a pillow, his artistic twin dreaming up nursery murals, Juliet sketching them all in her ever-present notebook, and Hendrik watching them with love in his eyes, Calliope knew the real victory wasn't in the boardroom. It was here, in the quiet moments between battles, where love grew, stronger than any business empire. Chapter 7. Shadows of the Past. The autumn Atlanta sun streamed through the Percy mansion's windows as Calliope sorted through paint samples for the nursery. At 16 weeks pregnant, her bump was now clearly visible, and the morning's ultrasound had confirmed they were having a girl. Julian sat cross-legged on the floor beside her, offering enthusiastic opinions on every shade of pink and purple. "What about this one?" he asked, holding up a soft sage green. "It's like your dress from the gala, the one where you and Dad fell in love." Calliope smiled, touched by his romantic heart. "That's actually perfect. What do you think, James?" James looked up from his homework at the kitchen island. "It's better than pink, and green is supposed to be calming. I read that in a design magazine." The domestic peace was shattered by the sound of heels clicking on marble. Mrs. Garcia appeared in the doorway, her face tight with concern. "Miss Calliope, there's someone here to see Mr. Percy. She's quite insistent." Before Calliope could respond, a striking blonde woman swept into the kitchen. She wore a designer suit that probably cost more than most cars, and her perfectly manicured hand clutched a leather portfolio. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "isn't this cozy? Hello, boys. You've grown so much." James went rigid, while Julian unconsciously moved closer to Calliope. She placed a protective hand on his shoulder, instantly alert to their discomfort. "Arabella?" James's voice was cold in a way she'd never heard from an 8-year-old. "Dad's not here." "Arabella Wellington," Calliope said, rising carefully to her feet. The name clicked into place. Richard Wellington's daughter, Hendrik's former fiancée. "I believe Mr. Percy is in meetings all day. You'll need to make an appointment through his office." Arabella's perfectly painted lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And you must be the pregnant lawyer. Daddy told me all about you. Tell me, was it planned? The perfect trap for Atlanta's most eligible widower?" "That's enough." Juliet's voice cracked like a whip from the doorway. "Boys, go up to your rooms, now." The twins didn't argue, though Julian squeezed Calliope's hand before leaving. James paused at the door, looking back with worry in his eyes, so like his father's. "Still playing house mother, Juliet?" Arabella examined her manicure. "I thought you'd have grown out of that by now. Though I suppose someone had to step in after Caroline." "Get out." Juliet's voice was deadly quiet. "Whatever game you and your father are playing, leave the children out of it." "Game?" Arabella's laugh was brittle. "I'm just here to return some things Hendrik might want. Old photos, documents, memories of how the Percy fortune was really built." Calliope's legal instincts kicked in. Any documents pertaining to Percy hotels should be handled through proper channels. "Oh, these aren't about the hotels, at least not directly." Arabella opened her portfolio, removing a yellowed newspaper clipping. "Did Hendrik ever tell you about his grandfather? The real story of how Percy Hotels started?" "Don't," Juliet stepped forward. "Those lies nearly destroyed this family once." "Lies?" Arabella's smile turned predatory. "We both know better. The civil rights era was such a fascinating time in Atlanta's history. So many complicated decisions made by powerful men. The implications hung heavy in the air." Calliope's mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't even known existed. The Percy fortune's origins had never been discussed in detail, always glossed over in company histories. "Whatever you think you know," Calliope said carefully, "bringing it up now won't change anything. The past is past." "Is it?" Arabella moved closer, her expensive perfume cloying in the sunlit kitchen. "Your child will inherit part of that past. Don't you want to know what kind of legacy you're really joining?" "The only legacy that matters is the one Hendrik has built," Juliet snapped. "The father who raises his sons with love and integrity, the man who turned down your father's corrupt business practices, the brother who supported my art when everyone else called it a waste of time." "Such loyalty," Arabella mocked. "But loyalty built on lies is like a house built on sand. One good storm, She trailed off meaningfully. The sound of a car in the driveway made them all turn. Hendrik's voice could be heard greeting the twins, who must have been waiting for him. "Dad!" Julian's voice carried clearly. "Arabella's here! She's being mean to Calliope." Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Hendrik burst in, his face darkening when he saw his ex-fiancée. "What are you doing in my house?" "Hello, darling." Arabella's voice dripped honey. "I was just having a fascinating chat with your new family about old times." "Get out!" Hendrik moved to stand beside Calliope, his hand protective at her waist. "Whatever revenge fantasy you and your father have cooked up, leave my family out of it." "Family?" Arabella laughed. "Is that what you call this? The grieving widower, the artistic sister, the replacement wife carrying the replacement child? How very modern." "Mrs. Garcia," Hendrik called, his voice tight with controlled anger, "please escort Miss Wellington out and call security. She's not to be admitted again." "Before I go," Arabella placed a thick envelope on the counter. A little light reading about the Percy Hotel's early days, specifically 1964, such an interesting year for race relations in Atlanta. After she left, silence fell heavy in the kitchen. Hendrik stared at the envelope as if it might explode. "The boys?" he asked finally. "Upstairs," Juliet answered. "They're upset, but okay. Julian's probably painting his feelings, and James is probably researching corporate espionage." Despite the tension, Calliope couldn't help a small smile. The twins' different coping mechanisms were so characteristic of their personalities. "What was she talking about?" Calliope asked softly. 1964. Hendrik sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "Our grandfather. He wasn't always on the right side of history. When other Atlanta hotels were desegregating, he resisted. But my father changed things. He secretly worked with civil rights leaders, helped integrate the hotels despite the board's opposition. Which almost got him killed," Juliet added quietly. "There was an attempt on his life in 1965. That's what's in those articles, I'm betting. The attempt was blamed on civil rights activists, but Dad always suspected it was actually segregationists angry about his changes." Why bring this up now? Calliope's legal mind was already analyzing angles. "Because it's messy," Hendrik said heavily. "Because the full story never came out. There were board members involved, powerful families who wanted to maintain segregation, families that still have influence today. Like the Wellingtons," Calliope realized. "They're threatening to expose the whole story." "Which would be complicated enough," Juliet said. "But with you being black, carrying a Percy heir, they'll try to twist it into something ugly. Make it seem like we're trying to rewrite history instead of right historical wrongs." Calliope's hand went protectively to her bump. Their daughter kicked, as if sensing her mother's distress. "I won't let them hurt you," Hendrik said fiercely. "Either of you, or use our family's past mistakes to destroy our future." "Dad?" James's voice came from the doorway. He and Julian stood there, holding hands like they used to when they were smaller. "Is it true? About great-grandpa?" Hendrik opened his arms, and both boys ran to him. "Come here, both of you. Yes, your great-grandfather made some bad choices, but your grandfather was brave enough to change things. That's the real Percy legacy, not being afraid to admit mistakes and work to fix them." "Is that why Arabella was mean to Calliope?" Julian asked. "Because she's going to have our sister?" "Partly," Hendrik answered honestly, "but mostly because some people don't like it when others are happy without them." "She tried to send us to boarding school," James said suddenly. "When she was engaged to you, I heard her talking to Uncle Richard about it." Hendrik's arms tightened around his son's. "Which is why that engagement ended. No one will ever send you away. This family stays together." Later that night, after the boys were asleep, Calliope found Hendrik in his study, reading through the documents Arabella had left. "We should get ahead of this," she said, legal training kicking in. "Release the full story ourselves, frame it properly, show how Percy Hotels learned and changed, became a leader in corporate responsibility. You're amazing, you know that." He pulled her into his lap, mindful of her bump. "Most women would be running for the hills after today." "I'm not most women," she kissed him softly. "I'm a lawyer who believes in justice, a mother who believes in protecting family, and a woman who believes in you." "The boys were so protective of you today," he mused. "Even James, a few months ago he could barely look at you. Now ... Now we're family," she finished. "All of us, including this little one." She guided his hand to where their daughter was kicking, "And family faces threats together." "I should have told you about all this sooner," he said, "about the company's history, about Arabella." "We can't change the past," she said, echoing his words to the twins. "But we can build a better future, starting with telling our daughter a story of redemption and growth, not shame and secrets." Upstairs, they found Julian had sneaked into James's room. The twins were curled together in James's bed, their dark, heads close as they whispered conspiracies. "Want to sleep in our room tonight?" Hendrik offered softly. Soon they were all piled in the master bedroom, the twins between them, like when they were smaller. Calliope watched her family sleep. Hendrik's strong profile, James's serious face relaxed in sleep, Julian's artistic hands twitching as he dreamed. The past might hold shadows, but their future was bright with promise. Let Arabella and Wellington try their worst. This family, built on love and acceptance, was stronger than any scandal. As she drifted off, Calliope felt her daughter move again. Even unborn, she was already part of this beautiful, complicated tapestry of love and redemption. Together, they would face whatever storms came and emerge stronger for the weathering. Chapter 8. Trust and Trials. The Percy Hotel's corporate archives occupied the entire basement level of their downtown headquarters. Calliope stood in the climate-controlled room, surrounded by decades of history, carefully preserved in acid-free boxes and manila folders. At 20 weeks pregnant, her growing bump made it slightly awkward to reach the higher shelves, but she was determined to find answers. "Dad used to bring us down here sometimes," James said, carefully organizing documents on a research table. At 9 years old, his methodical nature made him an excellent research assistant. He said, "Knowing our history helps us build a better future." "Your father is a wise man," Calliope replied, smiling at how James had adopted her legal team's color-coded filing system. "What have you found about 1964? Lots of newspaper articles about segregation." James frowned at a yellowed clipping. "People were really mean back then. I don't understand why skin color made them so angry. Fear and ignorance often make people cruel," she explained gently. "But what matters is learning from those mistakes." Julian looked up from where he was sketching the archive room. "Like how Dad learns from his business mistakes? He told us that's why he keeps all the old reports." "Exactly." Calliope opened another file, then paused as their daughter kicked energetically. "Your sister agrees." Both boys dropped what they were doing to feel their sister move. These moments had become precious family rituals, binding them together as they prepared for their newest member. Even James, initially so resistant, now took his big brother duties seriously. "Look at this," James said suddenly, pulling a document from his stack. "It's from Great-Grandpa Percy, but it's different from his other letters." Calliope examined the paper carefully. The letterhead was from 1964, but the tone was indeed markedly different from Howard Percy's usual business correspondence. It was addressed to a Reverend James Marshall, a prominent civil rights leader. "Your words have given me much to consider," she read aloud. "Perhaps my grandson Hendrik is right. The time for change is now, not some distant future. The cost of maintaining our current policies, both moral and financial, has become too great." "Hendrik," James interrupted, "but Dad wasn't born yet." "No," Calliope realized. "This would be your father's father, the one who secretly supported integration." The door opened, admitting Hendrik and Juliet. They'd been meeting with the PR team about potentially releasing a statement addressing the company's past. "Find anything?" Hendrik asked, dropping a kiss on Calliope's head before examining James's organized files. "Your father's name was Hendrik too?" Calliope handed him the letter. "Yes." His face softened reading the document. "Though everyone called him Rick, he died when I was 12. Car accident, or what looked like one. The attempt on his life that Juliet mentioned." "We never proved it," Juliet said, perching on the edge of the table. "But the timing was suspicious. He'd just pushed through major integration initiatives at all Percy properties against significant board opposition." Julian abandoned his sketching to curl into his aunt's side. Were people really trying to hurt him because he did the right thing? "Sometimes doing the right thing makes powerful people angry," Hendrik explained, pulling his son close. "But that doesn't mean we stop doing it." "Like how you wouldn't sell the hotels to Uncle Richard?" James asked. "Even when he tried to use our trust funds?" "Exactly like that." Hendrik ruffled his hair. "Speaking of which, the new trust documents are ready. Calliope helped structure them to protect both you boys and your sister." The mention of legal documents reminded Calliope of something. She waddled, there was no other word for it at this point in her pregnancy, to another section of the archives. "The original trust documents from your grandfather's era should be here somewhere. They might show who was on the board then, who opposed integration." "Already found them," James said proudly, pulling out a neatly annotated folder. "I made a list of all the board members and their votes. The Wellingtons voted against integration every time." "Of course they did," Juliet muttered. "Richard Wellington's father valued profit over progress. Like father, like son." Hendrik examined his son's careful notes. "James, this is excellent work. You've got real attention to detail." The boy beamed at his father's praise. "Calliope showed me how lawyers organize their research. She says good documentation wins cases. And good documentation might help us understand what really happened to your grandfather," Calliope added, then winced as their daughter delivered a particularly strong kick. "Baby sister doesn't like mysteries," Julian declared, placing his hand on her bump. "She kicks more when we talk about sad things." "Then let's take a break," Hendrik suggested. "It's almost dinner time anyway. Mrs. Garcia texted that she's making your favorite jewels." As they packed up their research, Calliope noticed James slipping some documents into his folder. "Find something interesting?" "Maybe." His expression was serious beyond his years. "Can I show you later?" "In private?" She nodded, touched by his trust. Over dinner, the conversation turned to happier topics. Julian's upcoming art show at school, James's science project on architectural engineering, plans for the nursery. But Calliope could see something weighing on James's mind. Later that night, after Julian was asleep, James appeared at their bedroom door, clutching his research folder. "Come in, buddy," Hendrik called softly. "What did you find?" James climbed onto their bed, a familiar comfort zone for serious family discussions. "I was reading the old board minutes," he began, "and I noticed something weird. Every time there was a vote about integration, one board member was absent, but he was there for every other meeting." "Who was it?" Calliope asked, though she had a sinking feeling she knew. "Thomas Wellington, Uncle Richard's father." James pulled out the carefully highlighted minutes. "And then, right after Grandpa Rick died, he suddenly started coming to every meeting again." Hendrik took the documents with slightly shaking hands. "I never noticed this pattern. I was too young when it happened, and afterward, sometimes grief makes us miss things right in front of us." "There's more." James said quietly. "I found these in a folder marked Personal Correspondence." He handed over several letters, their edges worn with age. The letters were between Hendrik's father and Thomas Wellington, growing increasingly heated as they discussed the future of Percy Hotels. The final letter, dated just days before the fatal car accident, contained what could be interpreted as a threat. "Consider carefully the consequences of your actions," Calliope read aloud. "Some changes once made cannot be unmade. Some losses cannot be undone." Hendrik's face had gone pale. "All these years, we suspected, but could never prove." "We can prove it now," James said firmly. "I kept really good notes, just like Calliope taught me. We can show everyone what really happened to Grandpa Rick." Calliope pulled him into a careful hug, mindful of her bump. "You're absolutely right. This is exactly the kind of careful research that uncovers the truth." "But it might not be enough for legal action," Hendrik cautioned gently. "It was a long time ago and—" "No," James interrupted with surprising force. "Uncle Richard and Arabella are trying to hurt our family again. They're trying to make people think bad things about us, about Calliope and the baby. We have to fight back." "And we will," Calliope assured him. "But safely and legally. These documents help us understand our past, and that understanding helps us protect our future." "Your sister's future," Hendrik added softly, placing his hand on Calliope's bump. "She'll grow up knowing the whole truth. How her grandfather fought for what was right, how her brother helped uncover the truth, how her family faced its past with courage." James snuggled closer, placing his own small hand next to his father's. "She's moving a lot tonight." "She knows she's safe," Calliope said, feeling overwhelming love for this brilliant, serious boy who had become so much more than a stepson. "She has the best big brothers in the world looking out for her." "Even if the Wellingtons try to hurt us again?" "Especially then," Hendrik promised. "We're Percys. We face our challenges together." Later, after James had gone to bed, Hendrik and Calliope lay awake discussing their next steps. "We'll need to move carefully," she said, legal mind working despite her exhaustion. "These documents prove historical corporate malfeasance, but more importantly, they show a pattern of Wellington family behavior. Using these might hurt the company's reputation," Hendrik warned, "bringing up the past." "The past is already being brought up," she pointed out. "Better to control the narrative, show how Percy Hotels learned and grew. Your father's legacy deserves to be known, not as a victim, but as a champion of progress." He pulled her closer, their daughter nestled between them. "When did you get so wise?" "Around the time your son taught me that the truth, however difficult, is always worth fighting for." Outside their window, Atlanta's lights twinkled like stars, while inside, a family strengthened by trials and truths held each other close, preparing for whatever battles tomorrow might bring. Their daughter kicked again, a reminder that the future was worth any fight, any sacrifice, any confrontation with the shadows of the past. The truth, like their love, would prevail. The Percy legacy would be one of progress, justice and family, a legacy their daughter would be proud to inherit. Chapter 9. Love Against All Odds. At 28 weeks pregnant, Calliope woke to an unsettling sensation. The late autumn sun was just beginning to rise over Atlanta, painting her and Hendrik's bedroom in soft golden light. Something felt wrong. "She's quiet this morning," she whispered, trying to keep the worry from her voice. Their daughter usually greeted the morning with enthusiastic movement. Before Hendrik could respond, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her stomach. "Calliope?" Hendrik was instantly alert, all traces of sleep gone. "Something's wrong." The words caught in her throat as another pain hit. "The baby." He was already moving, calling for Mrs. Garcia while helping her sit up. Julian appeared in the doorway first, his artistic sensitivity having somehow alerted him to the family crisis. "We have to sing to her," he insisted, placing his small hand on Calliope's belly. "She always moves when we sing." James joined them, taking in the scene with remarkable composure. Instead of panicking, he moved to the bed with determined calm. Scientific studies show that at 28 weeks, fetuses recognize and react to family voices. The drive to Atlanta Memorial was tense but controlled. The twins sat quietly in the back seat, still occasionally humming their sister's lullaby. Hendrik broke every speed limit, but his hand remained steady on Calliope's, anchoring her through each wave of pain. Dr. Bennett met them at the emergency entrance, her familiar face bringing some comfort. Initial tests revealed the baby was in distress, her heartbeat irregular. Calliope's blood pressure had spiked dangerously high, and the pain was coming from early contractions. "Preeclampsia," Dr. Bennett explained gently. "We need to get your blood pressure down and stop those contractions. 28 weeks is too early for this little one to make her debut." Through it all, the twins remained steadfast. Julian filled page after page with drawings, the baby, as he imagined her, Calliope surrounded by protective angels, the whole family together. James kept meticulous notes on every medical reading, asking intelligent questions that impressed even Dr. Bennett. "The contractions are slowing," the doctor reported late that afternoon, "but we'll need to keep you here for observation, Calliope. Bed rest for at least a few weeks." A few weeks? Calliope's legal mind immediately went to her cases, the ongoing investigation into Percy Hotel's history, all the preparations still needed for the baby. "Non-negotiable," Hendrik said firmly. "We'll handle everything else." "I can bring your work files," James offered, "and help organize them like you taught me." "I'll decorate your hospital room," Julian added. "Babies like pretty things to look at. I read that in one of the books." As sunset painted the hospital room in shades of pink and gold, Calliope watched her family settle in for the night. Hendrik had arranged for a small sofa bed, refusing to leave her side. The twins had created a nest of blankets nearby, their homework spread around them as they worked on a joint project. James researching preeclampsia, while Julian illustrated what he learned. "Look," Julian said suddenly, pointing to the fetal monitor. "Her heartbeat gets stronger when we talk. She knows we're here." Around midnight, Calliope felt a familiar flutter. "She's moving," she whispered excitedly. The whole family woke instantly. Even half asleep, the twins maintained their now familiar positions, Julian singing softly while James checked monitors. "Strong movements," he reported with satisfaction, "regular patterns suggesting normal fetal behavior." Dr. Bennett, doing her midnight rounds, smiled at the scene. "Your daughter is lucky to have such dedicated brothers, and such a strong mother." "And a father who's been through this before," Calliope added, watching Hendrik's face as he felt their daughter move. "The circumstances were different with the boys," Hendrik said quietly. "Caroline's pregnancy was difficult from the start. When the complications started—" He trailed off, old grief mixing with present worry. The twins had never heard much about their mother's final days, but something in their father's voice made them move closer, offering silent support. "But this is different," James said firmly. "Calliope's strong, and we know what to watch for now." "Right, Dr. Bennett." "Absolutely right," the doctor confirmed. "Your mother's condition was very different, and medicine has advanced significantly. We're just being extra careful with your sister." A week into their hospital stay, James made an announcement. "I think I want to be a doctor," he declared, "specifically a perinatologist." "A fetal medicine specialist," Julian translated proudly. "He's been studying with Dr. Bennett." The moment was interrupted by a text notification. Hendrik checked his phone, his expression darkening. "Wellington," Calliope asked, recognizing his reaction. Arabella's been talking to the press, suggesting that your condition is proof the Percy line is cursed, that Caroline's death, and now your complications. That's stupid, Julian interrupted fiercely. Our sister isn't cursed. She's strong, like Calliope. And like Caroline, James added quietly. Dad says she fought really hard to give us life. That's what Percys do. We fight for family. As if in agreement, the baby gave a strong kick that everyone could feel. The next week brought good news. Calliope's blood pressure stabilized, the contractions stopped completely, and Dr. Bennett began discussing discharge plans. That night, as the hospital room finally quieted, Hendrik held her close on the narrow bed. I was so scared, he admitted. When Caroline... I couldn't do anything but watch her slip away. The thought of losing you too, of the boys losing another mother. Hey. She turned carefully to face him. I'm not going anywhere. Our daughter's not going anywhere. We're fighters, remember? Outside the hospital window, Atlanta's lights sparkled like earthbound stars. Inside, a family forged in challenge and strengthened by love held each other close, waiting for their newest member to be ready to join their unshakable circle of love and protection. Chapter 10. The Choice. At 32 weeks pregnant, Calliope sat propped up in her bed at the Percy mansion, surrounded by legal documents. Despite being on strict bed rest, she couldn't completely disconnect from the brewing crisis at Percy hotels. James sat cross-legged beside her, helping organize papers while monitoring her blood pressure with the home equipment Dr. Bennett had prescribed. Your numbers are higher than this morning, he reported, with his newfound medical authority. You should take a break. Just a few more minutes, Calliope promised, reviewing another document. These board meeting minutes from 1964 are crucial for understanding the Wellington family's influence. Julian looked up from where he was painting a mural on the nursery wall, visible through the connecting door. Dad said no work. He'll be mad if you get sick again. As if summoned by his son's words, Hendrik appeared in the doorway. His usually impeccable appearance was slightly disheveled, evidence of another tense day at the office. Wellington Holdings had launched a new offensive, attempting to force a shareholder vote on the company's leadership. The boys are right, he said, giving each twin an appreciative look before joining Calliope on the bed. Everything else can wait. Not this. She handed him the document she'd been reading. Look at the voting patterns. Every time the Wellington family voted against integration, they had proxy support from the Brooks family board members. The Brooks family? Hendrik's brow furrowed. But they're our partners in the merger. We're our partners, James corrected, showing his father a business news article on his tablet. They withdrew from the deal this morning. It's all over the financial sites. Hendrik's face darkened. The Brooks merger had been meant to strengthen Percy hotels against Wellington's takeover attempts. Its failure left them vulnerable. Uncle Richard was at school today, Julian said quietly, putting down his paintbrush. He was talking to Mr. Brooks, Tommy Brooks's dad, at pickup time. They looked happy. Of course they did. Calliope's legal mind was already connecting dots. The Brooks family's historical alliance with the Wellingtons. This was never about a merger. It was about weakening Percy hotels from within. Making us vulnerable to a takeover, Hendrik finished, while simultaneously threatening to expose the company's segregation-era history if we resist. James, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. But we have proof now. About Grandpa Rick trying to fix things, about the Wellingtons being the real bad guys. We could tell everyone. It's not that simple, buddy, Hendrik started, but James cut him off with uncharacteristic force. Yes, it is. They're trying to hurt our family again. They hurt Grandpa Rick. They made Arabella be mean to us. And now they're trying to take Dad's company. We have to fight back." "James is right," Julian added, moving to join them on the bed. His hands were paint-stained, but his face was serious. "Calliope always says the truth is the best defense." Calliope felt tears threatening. These boys, so young yet so wise, fighting for justice in their own ways. The baby kicked vigorously, as if adding her vote to her brother's position. "There are complications," Hendrik said carefully. "Releasing the historical documents could hurt the company's reputation. Even with the proof of my father's reforms, the stock price would drop, making us even more vulnerable to takeover." "So we just let them win?" James demanded. "Let them pretend they're the good guys while they try to destroy everything Dad and Grandpa Rick built?" Before anyone could respond, Mrs. Garcia appeared with Juliet, who took in the impromptu family meeting with knowing eyes. "The PR team finished their analysis," she reported, settling into a chair. "If we release the historical documents, we'll take an initial hit. But long-term projections suggest transparency could actually strengthen our position, especially with younger consumers who value corporate responsibility." "The stock price, though," Hendrik began, "is already dropping because of Wellington's manipulations," Calliope pointed out. "At least this way we control the narrative. We show how Percy Hotels acknowledged its past mistakes and actively worked to correct them. We honor your father's legacy of courage and change." The baby kicked again, harder this time. James immediately checked the monitors, but Calliope squeezed his hand reassuringly. "She's just excited. Like her brothers, she knows when something important is happening." "What about the other hotel chains?" Julian asked. "The ones that were segregated too. Won't they be mad if we tell the truth?" "Probably," Hendrik admitted. "It could cost us some business partnerships, which means jobs could be at risk." "But keeping the truth hidden costs something too," James said thoughtfully. "It costs integrity. That's what you always say is most important, Dad, more than money or success." Hendrik looked at his son with pride and something like awe. "When did you get so wise?" "He gets it from his mother," Juliet said softly. Everyone turned to her in surprise. She rarely spoke about Caroline. She believed in integrity too. It's why she fought so hard to have the twins naturally, even when the doctors warned her about the risks. She said some things were worth any cost. The room fell silent as they absorbed this. Julian moved to hug his aunt, while James studied the family photo on the bedside table, one of the few they had of Caroline, taken during her pregnancy. "I think," Calliope said carefully, "that we need to honor both legacies. Caroline's courage in fighting for what she believed in, and Hendrik Sr.'s determination to right historical wrongs. Those are the real Percy family values." "The company might not survive," Hendrik warned, "at least not as we know it." "The company isn't what matters," James declared. "Family is, and family tells the truth." A sharp pain made Calliope gasp, instantly drawing everyone's attention. James reached for the blood pressure cuff while Julian started his calming singing, but she waved them off. "I'm fine. Your sister's just very passionate about family discussions." She managed a smile. "But maybe we should continue this tomorrow, when everyone's calmer." "No need," Hendrik said, his voice firm with sudden decision. "The boys are right. We tell the truth, all of it. What happens after, we'll face it together." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity, though Calliope was strictly limited in her participation. The PR team crafted a comprehensive statement about Percy Hotel's history, acknowledging past wrongs while highlighting the concrete steps taken toward justice and equality. Historical documents were prepared for release, showing both the company's segregationist past and the courageous efforts to change it. James threw himself into helping organize the historical records, while Julian created a series of paintings depicting the company's journey from discrimination to diversity. Even at 9, they understood they were part of something momentous. The morning the statement was set to release, the family gathered in Calliope's room. Hendrik sat on the bed beside her, one hand protectively over their daughter, while the other held the phone that would give the final go-ahead. The twins flanked them, with Juliet and Mrs. Garcia hovering nearby. "Once we do this," Hendrik said quietly, "there's no going back. Wellington will use it against us. Other companies might cut ties. We'll still have each other," Julian said with simple certainty. "And the truth." "And the baby," James added. "She deserves to be proud of her family's real history, not just the pretty parts." Calliope covered Hendrik's hand with hers on the phone. Together they sent the message that would change everything. Within minutes, news alerts began flooding their phones as the story broke across all major outlets. Percy Hotels acknowledges segregation is past, commits to continued progress, James read from his tablet. The stock's already dropping. "But look at social media," Julian countered, showing them his aunt's phone. "People are saying good things about us being honest. Someone called us brave." The baby kicked energetically, making everyone laugh despite the tension. "She approves," Calliope said, then winced as another pain hit. "Blood pressure's up," James reported instantly. "Dad, she needs to rest." "Everyone out," Mrs. Garcia ordered. "Let your father handle the business calls somewhere else. Calliope needs quiet." As the room cleared, Hendrik lingered. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said softly. "Your strength, your integrity. You've made us all better." "We did it together," she corrected. "As a family." Later that night, unable to sleep despite exhaustion, Calliope heard quiet voices from the twins' room. She waddled carefully to their door, Hendrik hovering protectively beside her. "Do you think Grandpa Rick is proud of us?" Julian was asking, "for telling the truth?" "Yes," James answered with certainty. "And Mom too. And the baby will be proud when she's old enough to understand." "We should name her Caroline," Julian suggested, "after Mom." "No," James said thoughtfully. "She should have her own name. But maybe Hope, because that's what she gave us. Hope that good things can come from hard times." Hendrik's arms wrapped around Calliope from behind, both of them fighting tears as they listened to their son's wisdom. "Hope Percy," Calliope whispered, feeling their daughter move at the sound of her name. "Perfect for a girl born from love, truth, and courage." The choice had been made. Whatever tomorrow brought, stock prices and business partnerships, media scrutiny and public opinion, they would face it together, strengthened by truth and bound by love that transcended blood and time. Hope kicked again, strong and sure, ready to join a family that had chosen integrity over ease, truth over profit, love over fear. The Percy legacy would be one of honesty and progress, a story of redemption and growth that their daughter would one day tell with pride. Chapter 11. The Truth Emerges. At 36 weeks pregnant, Calliope waddled through the Percy Mansion's library, finally cleared for light activity by Dr. Bennett. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, illuminating the family photos that now included her. Professional shots from the pregnancy announcement, candid moments with the twins, the whole family gathered around ultrasound images of hope. The fallout from releasing Percy Hotel's historical documents had been intense but manageable. Stock prices had stabilized after an initial drop, and public response had been largely positive. Several civil rights organizations had reached out about partnerships, and younger consumers were actively choosing Percy Hotels for their commitment to transparency. James sat at the library table, surrounded by old newspapers and his ever-present research journal. Since they'd gone public with the company's history, he'd become obsessed with documenting everything about Percy Hotel's past. "Did you know the gala where you and Dad met was exactly 60 years after the first integrated event at the Imperial Grand?" he asked, without looking up. "I've been tracking significant dates." "Really?" Calliope settled carefully into her favorite armchair, one hand supporting her heavily pregnant belly. That is quite a coincidence. Actually, James hesitated, an unusual uncertainty crossing his face. I don't think it was a coincidence. Look at this. He pushed forward a document, an email chain between Richard Wellington and Arabella, dated just before the Children's Hospital Gala. Calliope's blood ran cold as she read. The perfect symmetry, Wellington had written. The gala marking 60 years of integration and the Percy heir falling for a black woman. The press will eat it up when the truth comes out. How we orchestrated the whole thing. James. Calliope's voice shook slightly. Where did you find this? In the files Aunt Juliet recovered from grandfather's office. There's more. He pulled out another document. They had people watching Dad after Caroline died, learning his type, his habits. They hired someone to spill a drink on your original dress, so you'd have to wear the green one they knew would catch Dad's attention. The room spun slightly. Hope kicked vigorously, sensing her mother's distress. Does your father know about this? Know about what? Hendrik's voice came from the doorway. He entered carrying design proposals for new hotel properties, but his smile faded, seeing their expressions. What's wrong? James wordlessly handed over the documents. Calliope watched Hendrik's face as he read, saw the color drain from it as understanding dawned. They planned it, he said flatly. That whole night, it was a Wellington setup. Not everything, Calliope said quickly, but doubt crept into her voice. Had any of it been real? Dad? Julian appeared, paint-stained and worried. Why is everyone upset? Before anyone could answer, Juliet burst in, waving her phone. Have you seen the news? Wellington's giving a press conference. He's... Oh. She took in their faces, the documents scattered across the table. You found out. You knew? Hendrik's voice was dangerously quiet. I just figured it out today. I was coming to tell you. He's going public with it all. How they orchestrated your meeting. How they planned to use it to demonstrate the hypocrisy of Percy Hotels, claiming a commitment to racial equality, while the CEO fooled around with a black woman at a historic gala. But that's not what happened, Julian protested. Dad and Calliope fell in love, and then they had hope, and we became a real family. Did we? Hendrik's question hung in the air. Or was it all just another Wellington manipulation? The baby kicked hard enough to make Calliope gasp. James immediately reached for the blood pressure monitor, but she waved him off. Stop it, she said firmly. All of you. Yes, they may have engineered our meeting. They may have chosen my dress and arranged the circumstances, but they didn't create what happened after. They couldn't control how we felt, Julian said, wisdom beyond his years in his voice, or how the baby would bring us all together. Or how much we love you, James added quietly. That's real, even if the beginning wasn't. Hendrik sank into a chair, looking lost. I should have known it was too perfect. The way you challenged me in business but understood about the boys, how you fit into our family so seamlessly. Hendrik Percy, Calliope struggled to her feet, pregnancy awkwardness forgotten in anger. Are you saying you think I've been part of their plan, that everything, the boys, the baby, our life together, has been fake? No, Just what? Think Wellington somehow orchestrated your sons choosing to love me? Arranged for James to become passionate about medicine because of his sister? Planned for Julian to paint nursery murals and sing to Hope every night? The twins moved to flank her protectively. The gesture, so natural and unconditional, brought tears to her eyes. Dad's scared, Julian explained softly. Like when we were little, and he wouldn't date anyone because he was afraid of losing them like Mom. But we're not losing Calliope, James said with fierce certainty. Or Hope. They're ours now, no matter how they came to us. Hendrik looked at his sons, one artistic and empathetic, one logical and protective, both wise beyond their years. Then at Juliet, who had helped raise them in Caroline's absence. Finally at Calliope, radiant with their daughter, strong and sure despite everything. "I'm an idiot," he said simply. "Yes," Calliope agreed, but she was smiling. "A lucky idiot who got manipulated into meeting the love of his life. And having the best baby sister ever," Julian added. "Who has the most dedicated medical monitor in Atlanta," James said, brandishing his blood pressure cuff. Speaking of which, Calliope submitted to his examination, exchanging fond looks with Hendrik over their son's serious focus. Hope kicked energetically, making James frown at his readings. "Her movements are affecting the numbers," he reported. "You should sit down." "Actually," Calliope said, recognizing a different sensation, "I think my water just broke." The next few hours were controlled chaos. Dr. Bennett was called, hospital bags were gathered, and Mrs. Garcia took charge of the household arrangements. Through it all, the twins remained steadfast, using their practiced roles, James monitoring vital signs while Julian provided artistic distraction. In the delivery room, as contractions intensified, Calliope held tight to Hendrik's hand. "I want the boys here," she gasped, "when it's time. They should meet their sister first." "Are you sure?" "After Caroline... Exactly. They lost their mother in a delivery room. They should see that it can be different. That hope is bringing life and joy, not taking it away." Dr. Bennett agreed. And soon the twins were suited up in surgical gowns, their faces a mix of excitement and anxiety. "Remember what we practiced?" James instructed his father. "Breathing patterns are essential for optimal oxygen flow." "And Hope likes when we sing to her," Julian added. "It might help her not be scared of being born." Hours passed in a blur of pain, love, and family support. Julian sang softly while James monitored machines with Dr. Bennett. Hendrik alternated between coaching Calliope's breathing and assuring the twins that everything was proceeding normally. Finally, with one last push and a powerful cry, Hope Caroline Percy entered the world. Dr. Bennett placed her immediately on Calliope's chest, where she quieted, recognizing the heartbeat she'd grown beneath. "She's perfect," Hendrik whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. The twins crept closer, awe in their expressions. "She has Calliope's curls," Julian noted, touching one tiny dark ringlet. "And Dad's eyes," James added. "The Percy blue." "But her skin is like mine," Calliope said softly. "A perfect blend of both of us. Like how our family is a blend," Julian said. "Different pieces making something beautiful." As if on cue, Hope opened her eyes. Indeed the same ice blue as her father and brothers, and seemed to study each face in turn. "Hello, little sister," James said formally. "I've been monitoring your progress for approximately 252 days, and your vital signs are excellent. I painted your whole room with butterflies," Julian informed her, "because butterflies are free and beautiful and special, like you." Watching her sons bond with their sister, Calliope felt tears spill over. Hendrik kissed them away, his own eyes wet. "Wellington's press conference didn't matter," he said softly. By the time he went public, social media was already flooded with photos of Hope's birth, the story of love transcending manipulation, of family bonds stronger than any scheme. "The public response has been overwhelming," Juliet reported from her phone. "People are calling it a modern fairy tale. How their plan to create scandal backfired into creating a family instead." "Because they didn't understand," James said, still counting Hope's fingers and toes. "You can't fake love, not real love like we have. Or orchestrate family," Julian added, sketching his new sister's profile. "It just happens, like art. You can try to control it, but the heart does what it wants." Hope chose that moment to grip James's finger while reaching for Julian with her other hand, making everyone laugh. "She's already bringing people together," Calliope said softly, "like she has since the beginning." Later, as the twins finally slept on the hospital room sofa and Hope dozed in her bassinet, Hendrik held Calliope close. "I'm sorry I doubted, even for a moment," he whispered. "Wellington may have orchestrated our meeting, but everything that matters, falling in love, building this family, creating hope, that was all us. And the boys," Calliope added. "They chose to love me, to want this baby, to fight for our family. No one could plan that kind of love." "Speaking of fighting," he smiled against her hair, "wait until you hear what James did. Apparently, he's been documenting Wellington's attempts to manipulate the company for months. His research journal is practically a legal brief." "Of course it is," she laughed softly. "Our little doctor-lawyer in training." Hope stirred, making tiny snuffling sounds. Before either parent could move, both twins were awake and attending to their sister. "She just wants to be sung to," Julian said confidently, starting their special lullaby. "And her temperature is optimal," James reported, hands gentle as he adjusted her blanket. Watching their sons care for their daughter, Calliope and Hendrik held each other close. Let Wellington think he had orchestrated their beginning. The love that grew from that night, between partners, between parents and children, between brothers and sister, was more powerful than any scheme. The truth had emerged, not as a weapon to destroy them, but as proof that real love could grow even from artificial beginnings. Hope's birth hadn't just added to their family, it had proven beyond doubt that their bonds were unbreakable, their love unstoppable, their future bright with promise. Chapter 12. Full Circle. The Imperial Grand Hotel's ballroom sparkled with 1,000 memories as Calliope stood before the floor-length mirror, admiring the way her wedding gown caught the light. The emerald green sash around her white dress honored the color that had started their story 1 year ago. 3-month-old Hope slept peacefully in her matching green bassinet, dark curls framing her perfect face. "You look like a queen," Julian whispered, adding final touches to the sketch he'd been working on all morning. At 10 years old, he'd insisted on documenting every moment of the wedding preparations through his art. "Everything's perfectly on schedule," James reported, consulting his meticulously detailed timeline. "Hope's nap will end exactly 15 minutes before the ceremony, ensuring optimal alertness for the photographs." Calliope knelt carefully in her gown, gathering both boys close. "Thank you both, not just for today, but for everything. For accepting me, for loving your sister, for making us a real family." "We didn't just accept you," James said seriously. "We chose you, like you chose us. And now everyone will know," Julian added, "when you become officially our mom." The door opened to admit Juliet, resplendent in her maid-of-honor gown. "It's time. Are you ready?" Calliope looked at her reflection one last time, not just a bride, but a mother of 3, a successful lawyer, a woman who had found love in the most unexpected place and fought to keep it. More than ready. The ceremony was held in the same ballroom where Hendrik and Calliope first danced, but where that night had been full of uncertainty and hidden truths, today shone with honesty and joy. The guests rose as the doors opened, but it wasn't Calliope who entered first. James and Julian walked down the aisle together, pushing Hope's bassinet. They had insisted on this arrangement, wanting to physically demonstrate how the children were central to this union. Hope woke right on James's scheduled time, her blue eyes bright as she took in the scene. Then Calliope appeared, and Hendrik's breath caught just as it had that first night. She moved down the aisle with grace and purpose, but her eyes were not on the decorations or guests. They fixed on her family waiting at the altar, the man she loved, and the children who had become her own. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. The twins had helped write the vows, insisting on adding promises not just between bride and groom, but between parents and children. "I choose you," Hendrik said softly. his voice carrying in the hushed ballroom. Not because of fate or manipulation or circumstance, but because of who you are. The woman who challenges me in the boardroom and soothes our daughter at midnight, who taught James about legal precedents and Julian about color theory, who made us whole in ways we never knew we were broken. Calliope's voice was steady despite her tears. I choose you, all of you, the man who leads with integrity and loves without reservation. The boys who opened their hearts and showed me what family really means. The life we've built from unexpected beginnings. I choose us, exactly as we are. The twins stepped forward with the rings, James carrying them on a precisely measured cushion, Julian having designed their unique intertwined pattern. And we choose you, they said in unison, a practiced moment that still brought fresh tears to every eye, as our parents, our family, our home. Hope chose that moment to coo happily, making everyone laugh. Her timing, like everything else about her, was perfect. As Hendrik kissed his bride, the ballroom erupted in applause. Through the windows, Atlanta's skyline provided a backdrop to their joy, the same view that had witnessed their first night together, now blessing their official union. The reception that followed was a celebration not just of marriage, but of triumph. The Percy Hotel's board members raised toasts to their reformed company's success. Civil rights leaders praised their courage in confronting the past, but the most meaningful moments were the smallest ones. James organizing the table settings with scientific precision while explaining to guests how he'd calculated the optimal seating arrangement for maximum social interaction. Julian adding artistic flourishes to the place cards, each one personalized with sketches of the guests. Hope being passed between adoring family members, her Percy blue eyes taking in everything with her usual calm intelligence. As the sun set, casting golden light through the ballroom's historic windows, Hendrik led Calliope onto the dance floor. The same quartet from that first night began to play, but this time there were no secrets between them, no hidden agendas or uncertain futures. "Look," Calliope whispered, nodding toward their children. James was methodically documenting the day's events in his research journal, while Julian sketched the dancers. Hope watched her brothers from Juliet's arms, completely content in her family's presence. "Perfect," Hendrik agreed. "Exactly as it should be." They danced as the light faded, and stars began to twinkle over Atlanta, their family whole, their love triumphant, their future as bright as the diamonds that now graced both their hands. The Percy legacy had been transformed, not by corporate mergers or business deals, but by the simple, overwhelming power of love, chosen freely, truth faced bravely, and family embraced completely. And in that moment, in that ballroom where it all began, their story came full circle. Not an ending, but a culmination of choices made, battles fought, and love that had grown strong enough to weather any storm. The last light of day caught Hope's dark curls and blue eyes, James's serious smile, Julian's artistic hands, Hendrik's proud stance, and Calliope's joyful tears. Together, they had written a new chapter in the Percy history, one that would be remembered not for corporate triumphs or social position, but for the simple, profound truth that love, freely chosen and fiercely protected, could bridge any divide and heal any heart. The music faded, but their joy remained, as eternal as the stars now shining over the city where their story had begun, and where it had found its perfect completion. Stop. Before you go any further, how will you find me in this huge world of fake channels? You might think they are Mr. Peter, but they are just using Al to clone my voice. Don't be fooled. Subscribe to my official channel and become part of this beautiful family. Let's stay together and keep the real stories alive.